I'm sure you've heard me talk about 26shirts.com before, but just in case you haven't, let me fill you in. At 26 Shirts, they sell different limited edition sports-themed t-shirts every 2 weeks. After a shirt's prospective 2-week run is over, the design is retired and never sold again. They are operating out of Buffalo and now also offer options in Chicago. For every shirt sold, $8 is donated to a family in need. Not to a major charity or foundation, but to an actual family or individual in need. To show our support here at Chasing Cinema, when you buy a shirt, we will automatically put you into a drawing to win the next shirt free. That's right. You buy a shirt, $8 goes to help a family or individual in need, and you get a shot to win the next shirt absolutely free from Chasing Cinema. So go to www.26shirts.com and buy a unique Buffalo Sports Design t-shirt, help a great cause, and also get entered to win the next shirt absolutely free. Again, that's 26shirts.com, because you have the ability to help a complete stranger just because it's the right thing to do. www.26shirts.com. Help someone now. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Tirrano. I thank you for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com's official podcast. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes so each week, every episode is automatically downloaded into your files. You can put it on your iPad, your iPod, your iPhone, whatever it may be you listen to your podcasts on. Also, if you're not an iTunes person, you could always go to youtube.com/ChasingCinema. Hit that subscribe button, and you see all of our daily updates, which have have movie news and casting details and trailer reviews, as well as our podcast and major movie reviews. But today, it's going to be a podcast, so that means an hour-long discussion where my co-host, usually Louis Corzola, is joining me, but I always try to do a guest a week or a guest a month and bring someone interesting on. And today I have a very reoccurring guest and a good friend of mine, Mr. Josh Bell from the Las Vegas Weekly. Josh, sir, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for taking your, I know you are very busy, so thank you for taking your time to come on the podcast. If you aren't familiar with Josh's work, check out LasVegasWeekly.com to find all of his writings, as well as JoshBellHatesEverything.com, and follow him on Twitter at SignalBleed. Josh, how you been, man? How's everything going?
Oh, pretty good. Just seeing a bunch of movies. I had a chance to go to the Turner Classic Movies Film Festival in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, which was great. Full of classic film fans, seeing a lot of old movies, restorations, obscure stuff on the big screen, which is always fun. So that was cool. So yeah, I've just been seeing movies, which is all I do in my life. So which is great.
Unfortunately, I did not get to attend the TCM Film Festival. Next year, I'm going to have to do my best to get into that, because that's a festival I would really love to go to. But Josh, we talked a little bit about some of the movies you saw. What were some of your favorites that you saw at this festival? And this is in LA, right?
Yeah, it's in LA. It's in Hollywood, mainly at the Chinese Theater there, and at a couple other vintage theaters in Hollywood, the El Capitan and the Egyptian, great old theaters that have been there since the early days of Hollywood. So it's great. Of course, Hollywood itself is like going to the Strip, but the theaters are great.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, what I love about the TCM Festival is that you can see all these very, very well-known classic films, and they get stars to come, and a lot of times those are restored. But you can also see these obscure films that a lot of people have not heard of, and yet they'll be a huge hot ticket. You have to wait in line forever to go see some old film noir movie. And in fact, that was some of the best stuff that I saw. There was a film noir called Too Late for Tears, with, oh my God, now I'm forgetting her name, Lisbeth Scott, I believe, who just passed away not that long ago, was great as this sort of nasty femme fatale star. And it was interesting because she's the femme fatale character, and she's devious and evil, but she's also the protagonist of the film. So I thought that was pretty clever. And there was another noir-style drama set during the French Revolution called, and now I'm blanking, it's got two different titles. It's called The Black Book, but they showed it under another title, and now I am totally not remembering what it was. But it was great. It was really good. Whatever it was called. The Black Book is actually, I think, is how it's listed on IMDb, and it was the title on the screen even. So yeah, that was really cool. But it was exciting. I know we talked about you're a big Harry Houdini fan, and there was a world premiere restoration of a silent film starring Harry Houdini, The Grimm Game,
Yes,
which no one had seen in like 80 years, and they had a live orchestra with a new score, and it was really cool to see. It's not a great movie, but it was just a really cool event. And I think if you love Harry Houdini, though, you're right. You should definitely. I hope they'll air it on TCM, or they'll do a DVD release or something like that in the future.
I know he had like a DVD box set. I don't think the Grimm Game was a part of it, and I'm hoping they just do a whole Blu-ray box set because I'm a fan of Houdini. I read about this actually really late, and I believe Josh's already at TCM, so I didn't bother texting him then. But I knew as soon as he came back, I was like, "Josh, did you see the Grimm Game?" So I was so excited here he was. But as he said, it was a really great experience. I think, by the way, just take a quick step back. Josh, I believe, was referring to the movie Reign of Terror, also known as The Black Book.
Yes. I just looked it up as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm the same way. I'll blink and I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's that one movie, but I just want
right. I hate that. You're like, oh, it was really good. What was it called? I don't know.
So that's awesome. Great festival. I mean, I have to make my way down there. Have you ever tried to do any of the I forget what it's called, the Silent Film Festival in San Francisco? It's like a really big silent film festival.
Yeah, it is. It's called the San Francisco Silent Film Festival. I have not been to that. I actually have a friend who used to be a writer in Vegas and doesn't live here anymore, but he for years and years actually wrote for TCM, like for their website, and he would go to the San Francisco Silent Film Festival. They would send him to certain film festivals, classic stuff like that, and he would report on it. And he always had a great time. And a couple times he invited me to go, but it just never quite worked out for me. But I would like to go. He described it as very much, TCM Fest has a little bit of this, but he described it as very much of a fan kind of thing, people dressing up in costumes as their favorite silent film stars. And I love that aspect of the sort of, the fan devotion to something that in the larger culture people know nothing about, but you go to one of these events and people are cheering as Norma Shearer's name comes up on the screen or something like that, and someone's got their full on Mary Pickford cosplay going. So I would love to go to the San Francisco Silent Film Festival sometime, but it has not worked out for me yet.
Yeah, me neither. So we're gonna have to coordinate that so we can both get down there and check it out. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we have a really great, a cool silent film festival here in Las Vegas. We are getting more and more festivals. It seems year by year. I recently went to the inaugural Nevada Women's Film Festival, which was cool. I wasn't too crazy about the venue, but overall it was a really cool experience. But again, it was their first year, so all these festivals are working up. I know there's a few other festivals coming up that are also actually their inaugural festival. But one thing that I absolutely love when it gets to summer in Las Vegas, it's probably the only reason, it's the only thing I like about summer in Vegas, because there's no reason to like being in Vegas during the summer, is that each June, the Henderson Pavilion, for all our locals, usually play a Charlie Chaplin movie with the live orchestra. And we were talking, Josh, I'm not sure if it was you or it was with, Jeff Krause, who's also been a guest, that they weren't sure if they were going to do it another year, but I'm happy to announce they will be showing The Kid Saturday, June 6th at 8:30 p.m. at the Henderson Pavilion. So if you guys...
No, that's great news. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I know. I was super excited because everyone kept telling me it's going to be the last year. I was really bummed, but they are going to do The Kid. So if you are a local, check it out. Make sure to come down. It is a fun night. You got a live orchestra. They have snacks going. You could lay out a blanket in the grass area. It's really cool. It's a great way to support events like this so we get more and more. So obviously the turnouts have always been great. Josh, you go every year, right? You've been to the...
Yeah, I have been. And I don't know if I was the one who was telling you about it, but I had definitely heard that they might not do it again because they had sort of exhausted the officially licensed Chaplin films that they'll send from Paris, and these big, they show them on on 35 millimeter, and that they have a specific score for. And they had said maybe they would repeat and go back to one that they'd done before. So I'm not sure what exactly happened, but The Kid is not one that they've done before. So I'm glad that whatever had to work out was worked out and they're able to do it because, I've been to all of them. It's always really cool. Having gone to the TCM Fest a bunch of times, I've seen a lot of silent movies with live accompaniment now, and it's always a great experience. So I'm glad that we've got that going.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I was just really kind of peaking. Well, I wouldn't say peaking, but I was starting to like think about creating Chasing Cinema and getting into writing reviews when, 4 years ago when the first Charlie Chaplin thing happened. It was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. It was the first time I saw a silent film with a huge audience, and it was obviously the first time I saw a silent film with a live orchestra. And the orchestra, I believe, is from UNLV. The composer always dresses up as Charlie Chaplin. It's just a really good time. It's a good family event, and something that I'm really glad that we get out here, because I honestly think that they weren't. I don't know if they believe that it would do very well, and it actually does. It's usually always busy, so I'm very happy with that. So besides catching up as we just did, me and Josh are going to be talking about some major movie news that is going on the past couple days, and then we are going to go into our reviews of Unfriended and True Story. Josh was able to see, had the lucky opportunity to see Paul Blart too, and he's going to talk a little bit about that as well. But first, we're going to kind of take a step back, and we'll flash forward 2-3 days ago, I believe, when it was released that Batman vs Superman trailer was going to get tweeted out by Zack Snyder. Just a little clip on Twitter. Everyone was getting really excited. It ended up coming out around that same night, which I believe was Wednesday night instead of Thursday morning. And then lo and behold, they're trying to promote everyone going to see it in theaters. You could actually, I believe in some states, it wasn't available in Nevada, you could sign up to see the trailer in an IMAX theater. So on Monday, which is April 20th. So everyone is getting so excited. Everyone is anticipating they see this clip, which, did you see this little clip, Josh, or no?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen any of it, honestly.
Reveals the Batsuit and the Superman costume, and everyone got excited. But later that day, all the heat that is going around, everyone being excited about Batman v Superman, just totally gets trumped out, because around noon, the second teaser trailer, which I'm surprised they're calling it a teaser, because it's about 2.5 minutes anyway, is the Star Wars The Force Awakens second teaser trailer dropped, and then the internet exploded. Josh, I know you saw that. Before we talk about it, how is your relationship with Star Wars? Are you a Star Wars fanatic? Is this something you really care about? How do you feel about them going on with it? What are your opinions?
I try not to be a fanatic about any movie franchise, because I feel like that's just a waste of time. I like Star Wars fine. It's not something that was a huge part of my childhood, which is, I think, the reason that a lot of people are fanatics for these kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
I did see the Star Wars movies when I was a kid. In fact, I think Return of the Jedi is the first movie I ever saw in a theater when I was like 4 years old, which I do not remember at all. But my parents tell me this. But I saw it again when I was older than 4, and saw all those movies as a kid and enjoyed them, but never had any strong attachment to them. So when the prequels came out, I had no feeling one way or the other, really, about the fact that there were more Star Wars movies. I thought, great, cool. And I think people go overboard on hating the prequels. They're not that good, but they're not that bad. And again, because I didn't have such a strong emotional attachment, it didn't, offend my soul that the movies were not that good. Where I feel like a lot of people who were so emotionally invested in the series and in the characters, and so invested in the idea that these prequel movies would be the greatest things ever made, the fact that they were not just really, really crushed them. So, yeah, I've seen the Star Wars movies, the original trilogy, a few times, probably a couple times as a kid. I watched them again when they were re-released. The special editions were re-released in theaters in, I think it was like 1997. I remember watching them again before writing a review, I think, of the last prequel, because that came out after I had started writing movie reviews. And I anticipate I'll probably watch them all again in preparation for this new film. And I'm happy to do that. I don't hate them. But I also feel like getting so excited for a movie 8 months before it comes out is a waste of energy.
It's crazy, because I kind of spaced on when Batman was coming out last night. We were talking about it, and they told me it comes out I think of May of 2017 or
no, it's 2016.
2016.
It's like a year from now.
Yeah, but I'm like, oh my God, like, it's so early and people are getting so pumped up. But I'm the same way with Josh, actually. Like, I own the original Star Wars trilogy on VHS when I was a kid, and I used to watch the lightsaber battles and stuff, and I'd fast forward. I would never watch A New Hope, and I would just watch, Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back. But I never had that huge, like, oh, Star Wars. It never was a huge part of my childhood as well. I mean, I watched them. I obviously didn't grasp the concept. But as I got older, I went back and watched them, and obviously taking a lot of film courses. They come up a lot. And so I have seen them. I do really enjoy the original trilogy, though, like I said, I guess, like Josh said, these aren't something that if they're bad, it hurts my soul either. So I guess that's kind of a benefit for us. So if it is bad, it doesn't affect us too much. But, I like Josh, wasn't too crazy at the newer trilogy either. I think people, I'm opposite of people. I really enjoy the first two. I think the second one's really underrated. Like, people hate on the second one for what reason? I really enjoyed the second one. The third one I wasn't very crazy about.
You're talking about the prequel, the second prequel? Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I think, again, not having seen them since the third one was released, maybe I would feel differently. But at the time, I remember thinking that the second one, Attack of the Clones, was the best one. It had the most action. It was the most reminiscent of that kind of Saturday afternoon serial feeling that George Lucas goes for. And the third one is just a bunch of continuity porn, which I find very frustrating whenever franchises, especially like comic book related things, do that, where it's just a bunch of fan service.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, it seems like everyone I talk to, especially out of, people love that third movie. And I was like, that was the weakest one for me. I think, the second half of the episode 1 is awesome. I think they have like an amazing, one of the coolest action sequences, the battle between Darth Maul and them two at the very end. But yeah, it's what I said. Episode 2 is really underrated. People give that movie a lot of crap for what reason, I don't know. Maybe because, again, we're not that emotionally invested to where it is our life. But the first teaser of the new Star Wars... Well, all right, let's back up a little bit. So George Lucas sells the property of Star Wars to Disney, I think 2 years ago, maybe 3.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it might even be longer. It's all starting to blend. And then they released that they're going to be making more films. And then fast forward a little bit, the first teaser trailer of Star Wars The Force Awakens drops. And again, there's this huge divide. It seems like people gave that trailer, people were excited at the same time, but they were so skeptic and they just attacked everything. I mean, there were conversations about how this lightsaber looked and how the rolling droid was stupid. And I was like, guys, man, you guys are looking way too into this. You have no idea what the story is. I know there was some backlash about, I forget the gentleman's name who's going to be in it.
John Boyega?
Yeah, about him. They were, complaining about John Boyega being in the movie because, for racial reasons, I didn't understand even where that came from, and it was just really shocking. What did you think about the first teaser when you saw it? I mean, like, I know now that you don't really get excited for movies that early, but did you think that this was, at least it looked intriguing?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think in both cases, for that one, which really showed you very, very, very little, and for the new one, which shows you a little more, sure, it looks intriguing. I mean, they're good trailers. It looks like it'll be a cool movie, but there's so little that you can tell from these trailers. Like, there's some good images, but you don't even know what the story is at this point, and they've been so tight-lipped about what that might be. Even this newer trailer that has more to it doesn't really tell you what the story is about. But yeah, I mean, I think as trailers, they're solid. They didn't make me think the movies would be bad. They didn't make me think, oh my God, I'm going to dread seeing these movies. I just don't feel like I want to invest a whole lot in getting, just waiting and waiting and waiting. There's going to be loads and loads of other movies that come out between now and then. And hopefully some of them will be good. And I'd be
I hope so.
Much more interested in that.
He's right. He's absolutely right. I agree with him very much so. But the world kind of all stopped in the Star Wars trailer. It was a lot of reminiscing. The whole trailer is pretty much more of a send back, where the first teaser was more of everything that we're going to see that's new and unfamiliar. Then we kind of fall back, and we're seeing everything that is familiar, from R2-D2, the Millennium Falcon, and Of course, we hear Luke Skywalker doing a voiceover, and then at the very end of the trailer, we have Chewie, the Wookiee, and Han Solo, which pretty much just blew everyone's mind. I mean, I was reading the comments when that trailer first hit, and people were crying. Everyone was standing there crying, and they were so most affected. But I will admit, that trailer did get me a little bit more excited than the original teaser. But granted, it is much longer. And but I think that it does. I could already tell that it has that that feeling that it's going to be very much like the Star Wars movies. Doesn't look like it kind of swayed from that same type of emotion and that whole their kind of tone, if you will. But again, it's so hard to tell, and so much can change in this amount of time. So, but it was awesome. It was cool. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure to go check it out because I'm sure you haven't, though, because I'm pretty sure everyone in the world has seen it already. But very, very cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right, especially about how much can change. You look at the trailer and you think, oh, this is a finished thing, but they've got to still be editing this. They're still putting special effects shots together. I mean, with 8 months left to go, they're not finished. So, yeah, who knows what'll happen?
Who knows? But I know pretty much every young child and a lot of, because I believe the first film came out in the
77, I think.
Yeah, 77. So, a lot of these people who saw it when they were kids are much older now, and I think when they saw just Chewie and Han, their heart melted, and that little boy in them came out. And I guess, and I can understand that's why people love Star Wars, because it keeps the child in them alive, if you so to speak. But even I got kind of goosebumps at that, just kind of seeing that. But yeah, very cool trailer. We're moving on, but it's very awesome. If you have not seen it, go check it out. But as I'm telling this whole day, as I'm speaking, I'm just kind of reminiscing about yesterday. So that trailer comes out, stomps the little clip that Zack Snyder released, and then last night around 11 o'clock, the Batman v Superman trailer leaks. Someone where I believe it's a Spanish-speaking country or wherever they were, maybe it's Mexico, I'm not too sure, because the movie it's all recorded on a phone. The quality's not that great. I know some people aren't watching the movie because who wants to watch it on a shaky phone, and that's not that great quality. You can't really hear anything. I know Josh didn't want to watch it on that, and I don't blame him. Fortunately, I was just like, all right. Because at first when I saw the link, I didn't think it was real. Because the picture that they posted with it didn't look real. But I just, devil's advocate. I clicked on it, I watched it, and I was really shocked. Very cool trailer. A lot to get excited for. A lot of people have been asking me, which one looks better, Star Wars or Batman v Superman? I'm just like, man, I can't even make that. I don't even know how I make that comparison right now. I've only seen little bits. I've seen maybe 2 minutes of what they've compiled on both films. I don't want to give too much away because I want Josh to see it and enjoy it. But there was some really cool stuff. There was Batman. There was Superman. I'm a big Ben Affleck fan. So the minute I saw Ben Affleck, I was like, yes. Jeremy Irons' voice as Alfred was pretty cool too. I like the opening of the trailer, the debate about Superman. Very, very cool, very exciting. It was just a great day in movie news yesterday. But if I were you, if you've not seen it yet, if you held out this far, I'd say just hold out, watch it when you could see it in the theater. Because I know they were talking about it being in front of Mad Max, and then there was even some talk about it being in front of Avengers. So I don't know how soon it'll be available and when we'll be able to see it, though.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to this discussion. As you said, I didn't see it. I think it's ridiculous to watch a cell phone video of a movie trailer for a movie that I don't even care about anyway. So,
that's right. We had this discussion. We are kind of very tired of the whole comic book thing. But
yeah, no, I mean, and it's not just that. I mean, I think the fact that I didn't think Man of Steel was very good. I don't like Zack Snyder. I think the way that DC is trying to build this cinematic universe feels very forced. And this movie doesn't come out for a year.
He's right. You can't argue with that, man. Well, I mean, I kind of like Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder's hit or miss with me. I enjoyed. I'm spacing. I enjoyed Dawn of the Dead. I enjoyed that remake.
I did too. That's the only thing that he's done that I've liked.
Okay, well, at least you like that.
Yes.
So you didn't like Watchmen?
No, I didn't really. I mean, I love the Watchmen comic, and I feel like the thing about Watchmen, the greatest thing in Watchmen is the opening credits, is that sequence of tableaus that gives you a sense of the world. That was really effective. But other than that, Watchmen is such a faithful adaptation. I mean, up until the ending, at least, which I think is actually maybe makes more sense than the comic book ending. But and it just has no life to it, and it misses the satirical point of the comics while indulging in all of the violence. And I don't know, maybe it's not Zack Snyder's fault. Maybe it's just not the kind of thing. It's very, the tone is very much tied to the time period in which it was released initially in the 80s. And I don't know that anybody would have been able to make a great Watchmen movie. But regardless, I don't think Zack Snyder did.
Well, when you said lifeless for a second, I thought we were talking about Sucker Punch, because that was one.
Well, that too, yeah.
That movie he did. I hated that movie. I mean, I had a real problem with that movie. I did not like that at all. But I mean, I enjoyed Watchmen. I actually really enjoy Legends of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole. I thought that was a cool movie. 300 is very much loved around, but everyone loves it. I wasn't too crazy about it. It's cool. I get it. There's guys fighting. It's fun, sure, but. I mean, I enjoyed Man of Steel, and I mean, what did you have? I mean, I'm sure you've talked about it. I don't think we have, but you weren't crazy, or was it more on the really dislike area with Man of Steel? Because you're not alone. It seems like most people have fallen off Man of Steel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I didn't hate it. I mean, let's trying to remember now. No, I mean, I think it didn't necessarily. It didn't have all the pitfalls of a lot of the other Zack Snyder films, which is one thing that I was worried about, I guess. It doesn't have as much of that sort of ultra violence and the fast motion, slow motion thing that he loves to do. I don't recall that being in the movie. But I think the bigger problem with Man of Steel was the tone that comes less from Zack Snyder and more from Chris Nolan, who produced and was involved in developing the screenplay, and of course has stepped away from all these DC movies, but at the time was the sort of standard bearer for those movies after doing his Batman films. And I think turning Superman into this same sort of grim, humorless, everything is serious, everything is awful kind of character just really doesn't work. And I mean, there's been endless online debates about Superman killing Zod at the end of the film, spoiler, whatever, for a movie that came out 3 years ago. And we don't need to rehash that, but to me, it felt like it missed the point of the character of Superman. And it rehashed a lot of cliches that are not unique to that movie, that are a pitfall of a lot of these big comic book movies or not even just comic book movies. I mean, even like, the second Star Trek movie, where you have to have like the full scale destruction of a city, at the end of the movie in order to sell the villainy of your bad guy with this disregard for anything related to consequences. So yeah, I think thematically it was frustrating. I did like Michael Shannon. He was a good choice to play Zod. I'll say that.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. I remember really enjoying the beginning of that movie. I liked how Krypton actually became a place and not just more of like a backstory or just like one room like it's always been portrayed. It's like we always see Krypton like this one room where Superman is shipped off, and then we see this planet explode. We never got to explore the planet as a whole, but again, we don't got a good judge of a movie that happened 3 years ago and kind of go into it. But I mean, there's so much going on right now, and there's things that pull me one way and the other. I mean, I'm hoping this movie is great. I mean, like Josh and I could tell you like Josh. We always want movies to succeed. I'm sure Josh is the same. We always go into a movie wanting it to be good.
Yeah.
So it's never like we just, this is this. And, I mean, we've been able to guess. We've been able to be pretty good at estimating how good a movie's going to be. But, we always want them to be good. But, we have things like Spider-Man just getting rebooted over and over again. And, Kevin Feige talked that he's going to do another Spider-Man movie, though without the origin story, thank God. It's just like, oh man, how do you not get frustrated with these things and just be like, all right, the super thing is getting out of hand that we could reboot a character 3 times in less than 2 decades. I mean, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, it is easy to get very, very cynical about this. In fact, I just right before I talked to you, I was emailing with my editor at Las Vegas Weekly because I just wrote up the big summer movie preview for Las Vegas Weekly, and he said to me, you seem very angry in this piece, and it's just I try not to be. I didn't think that I did. Maybe it was a subconscious thing that came across in what I wrote. But yeah, I mean it's for me at least. It's easy to get really burned out and fatigued by these big franchise movies. And of course, writing up the summer movie preview, that's what it focuses on, all these sequels and reboots and adaptations of old TV shows and stuff. And it's easy to get very tired of that stuff. And but it's also easy to forget that that's only a small portion of what the whole world of movies is about. To me at least, like, sure, those movies make all the money and receive the most attention, but there's hundreds of movies that come out every year that are not those movies, and I mean, some of which, or many of which, are also very bad, but at least represent a much wider spectrum of what you can see at the movies.
Absolutely. We'll put this conversation to rest, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it again somewhere down the line. We'll get Josh back on, and we'll review that movie in a year. So we'll get back to that conversation then. All right. Well, let's hop into our reviews of this week. 3 movies, 3 major pictures came out this week. True Story, Unfriended, and Paul Blart. And since I've not seen Paul Blart, let's get that out of the way so me and Josh get back to conversating, which we'll do a Q&A kind of style. Josh, since were you a fan of Paul Blart 1?
No, I'd like to meet a fan of Paul Blart 1. No. I certainly was not. The first Paul Blart it's not a good movie. It's a very lazy, poorly plotted, dumb comedy with a lot of jokes about Kevin James being fat and falling down, and a plot that kind of rips off Die Hard and puts it in a mall. But it made a lot of money. I mean, that's why we have a sequel. I don't know why it took so long. Just to make sure that everyone forgot about the first one before we did a sequel. But there must be people who did like it because it was a surprise hit. It made a lot of money. But it's a bad movie, and it's the kind of bad movie too that it's not like some sort of horrifying for the ages train wreck. It's just a lazy piece of nothing, which is why it's even more amazing that it made so much money.
I mean, that movie came out on DVD when I was working at Hollywood Video. We shut down in 2010, so it's been at least 6 years, almost 5 years. So it's been a long time. So it has taken a while. I was not crazy about that movie. I didn't see it in theaters, but we used to have to watch the movies before they came out at Hollywood Video. We used to call them pre-streets, and so we could recommend and de-recommend them. And I remember that being the longest movie ever. It was just, I was like, can I shut this off now? And unfortunately, I'm not one of those people who just turn something off. I've never done that. I can't do that. I have to watch something all the way through, and usually it just ends up biting me on the ass. But all right, so Paul Blart 2, which takes place here in our lovely city. Well, I believe the majority takes place here in our lovely city, Las Vegas, which is kind of interesting because I know a lot of it filmed at Wynn Properties, and from what I hear, though, it's really nearly impossible to get filming approval at the Wynn Properties, no matter what you're filming, either if it's for any sort of media. So I'm glad that's cool that happened. But was it paid off? Was it worth it?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it was worth it for the win. The movie is a fantastic showcase of that hotel, and I would say something like 97% of the movie takes place in the Wynn and the Encore. I mean, not even elsewhere in Las Vegas. There's one tiny brief scene of Paul Blart kind of wandering around on the Strip, and there's a few establishing helicopter shots to show us that we're in Las Vegas. But other than that, the whole thing is in the Wynn, including a cameo from Steve Wynn himself, where he does not say a word because I wonder if he could not even read a line properly, or I don't know. It's very strange because he interacts with Kevin James and does never say anything. But yeah, I mean, whatever the Wynn did, whatever deal they negotiated, I know part of it had to do with the tax credits that come from the government for the movie to film in Las Vegas. But whatever they did to get it to be at the Wynn and not, say, at a different hotel casino was totally worth it because it showcases everything about them. They've got restaurants, they've got the hotel rooms, they've got Le Rêve, which is their big production show, they've got their gardens. I mean, everything is a giant commercial for the Wynn. So there's that. If you are a booster of Las Vegas, then you can feel good about that. I wish they had done all that maybe in a better movie. But there is that. But no, I mean, it's just as bad as the first one. And maybe even a little worse because it not only is it lazy recycling other movies, but it just recycles the first movie. I mean, almost exactly the same thing. Paul Blart is a lovable not really very lovable, but meant to be lovable loser, kind of bumbling security guard. He gets invited to this convention for security guards in Las Vegas, shows up, and coincidentally, there's a big heist going on in the hotel at the time that he's there, and he has to thwart it, just like he thwarted a heist in the mall in the first movie. So there you go.
Okay, so Josh Bell, not a fan of Paul Blart too, but my question is, now, Paul Blart did not screen for critics, so Josh went on general audience time. He went with he was in the theater with the regular audience, and I want to know how many people were in that theater and how are their reactions.
I went at 9 p.m. on Thursday night, so it was actually the second showing of the movie because there was an earlier one at 7. I would say there were maybe 12 people in the theater. Including one who is another local film critic who had also bought a ticket because he had to see the movie as well, which was kind of hilarious to run into him there. I caught maybe 1 or 2 chuckles throughout the film. And there was one part where I'm not sure why this happened, but we're sitting there. You go through all the previews and the movie starts, and unlike a lot of movies, this has the title comes up right away, and these 2 people who were sitting a couple rows in front of me just get up and walk out with their popcorn and everything. Like, I don't know, maybe they were just in the wrong theater, and once the title came up, they realized, oh no, we were supposed to go see Furious 7 or whatever it was, but I just thought it was funny, as if they were like, oh no, that's it, we're out. We can't take any more than that.
This is enough.
That's enough, yeah. I wish I could have walked out with them.
I'm just wondering if the other critic just used that excuse, I have to review this too, or just really wanted to go see it on his own time.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we were both really
yeah. That's awesome. Unfortunately, I don't see anything really trumping out Furious 7 this month. That movie is done extremely well. I know it made over $800 million, and I don't think that's really updated right now. We probably won't know the newest amount since until Monday, but granted, movies make 70% in the first 2 weeks, but I still think Furious 7 is going to probably make more than the majority of what's going to be out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think between Paul Blart, which again, I think they've completely squandered any momentum that they might have had from the success of the first movie, so I don't think that's going to be a huge thing. And then Unfriended, which we'll talk about, is a small scale movie. I mean, Unfriended was made for MTV and then bumped up to be released in theaters. So it's not like it cost a lot of money to make. I'm sure it'll make its budget back, but it won't challenge Furious 7 in any way.
Yeah, no. And True Story, I feel the same way. I feel like it's a movie that will be seen by people who've been following it, but I think that it's not a movie that people have heard much about.
Right, and that's a limited release, although we are getting it here in Vegas, but it's not released on the same scale, I don't think, as Paul Blart,
okay.
For example.
All right, so which one do you want to get into first, True Story or Unfriended?
It's your show. We can do whichever one you like.
Well,
first.
Let's talk about True Story.
Okay.
So for those who are not familiar with True Story is the latest film that tells the true story of Christian Longo, a man from Oregon, I believe, who is accused of murdering his wife and their 3 children. And during his spree running on the run, he used the alias Michael Finkel, who is actually a writer for the New York Times, played by Jonah Hill. Christian Longo is played by James Franco, if I've not made that clear yet. Eventually Longo is caught, and Finkel finds out that he has been using his name. The 2 meet, and they actually start a connection, and they start a very, very interesting relationship. And I won't give away too much, but this is a true story. It has happened. All the details are out there. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I don't think we're going to spoil very much, but maybe a little bit, but we'll give you a fair warning. Jonah Hill and James Franco, 2 actors that we know have the ability to be at an Academy Award level, is also being in the most ridiculous movies in general. Especially Franco. Franco was I don't remember. I don't think he's done really a serious movie since maybe Spring Breakers, but before that was 127 Hours, which he was nominated for. And then he just kind of started doing the comedies that he's in. Jonah Hill is kind of being very fluctuated. He's done the Jump Street movies. He did Wolf of Wall Street. He did Moneyball. And I'm a real big fan of Jonah Hill. I think his being so versatile and being able to be clumsy, comedic, very feminine type guy who's always just all over the place, and opposed to playing in these movies like Moneyball, especially. I loved him in Moneyball, and Wolf of Wall Street. In this picture, he's able to really kind of just turn that all off. True story. Josh, what did you think of this movie?
I guess I would say I was disappointed. Not that I necessarily had expectations one way or the other, but I think when you see all the facts of the true story of the real case as they're presented in this movie, and then if you go read a little bit more about it, it's such a weird, unlikely scenario with all of these different elements that came together. I mean, one thing that you didn't mention is not only was Finkel this writer who connected with this accused murderer, but at the same time that this guy was impersonating Finkel, he was being fired from the New York Times for having fabricated details of a story that he reported. So you've got his sort of fall from grace as this star writer at the same time that he connects with this murderer, and just all these things that could come together in an unlikely and really interesting way. I think in the hands of maybe a different writer or a different director, this movie could have been something. It could have been, kind of satirical. It could have been more delved more deeply into the psychology of these two guys who are clearly both big egotists in different ways. And I just feel like it didn't really do any of that. Watching this movie, I was still drawn in just because of the facts of the story, and I didn't know all of the facts before seeing the movie. So as it unfolded, it was like, oh wow, this happened and then this happened. But at every moment, I kept thinking, I wish this was a Steven Soderbergh movie. I wish this was a David Fincher movie, or even I wish this was a documentary that just kind of told me the facts without this sort of dull, ponderous, heavy tone that the director brings to the version that he told.
Yeah, it was a movie that when I sat in the theater, I did enjoy it. I mean, I did like the movie, but it was a movie that when you think about it, the more I sat on it, the more issues I had with it, where I think the movie peaks really early, as far as how good it is. I think that I do enjoy. I think I enjoyed the performances by James Franco and Jonah Hill a little bit more than Josh. Josh, were you crazy about the performances?
I mean, I thought both of these performances were okay at best. I think Jonah Hill, I'm not as big a fan of his as you are. I think he maybe tries a little hard. He tones himself down so much to appear serious that there's kind of a flatness to his performance. And I think James Franco, you mentioned, that he hasn't really done serious movies lately and just these comedies. But the thing about James Franco is he's in a ton of movies that nobody sees because he just works like crazy. And, I think he's kind of on autopilot a lot of the time. And there were a couple moments for him. There's a moment where his character testifies in court and gives his version of events that I thought was pretty fascinating. But in general, I thought these performances were adequate at best.
Okay, I enjoyed them a little bit more. I really dug Franco in this movie. I mean, even though the man has a lot of aneurysms, like pretty much before every sentence, Franco took his time to clear his throat, start a sentence very slow. You could just kind of see the gears turning in his head. And I really dug that. And actually, Josh is right. He does do a lot of kind of movies that we don't see. I actually remember seeing some of the list and being like, what? I don't remember that. But, at the same time, there were some parts of the movie where I was like, he is kind of like where he's on autopilot, where he's not fully there and he's not fully doing something to really kind of capture. Though I did like Jonah Hill. Like I said, I enjoy Jonah Hill. I'm a fan of Jonah Hill, so maybe I'm a little bit biased there. But I will say, I know you weren't absolutely crazy about Theory of Everything, but I love that movie, and I love Felicity Jones, that movie. And I think she is totally wasted in this movie. I mean, one of my biggest issues with this movie is that the subplot, or I guess maybe even not even, it doesn't even deserve that title, is the relationship between Finkel and his girlfriend or fiance. I'm not even really sure.
Yeah, they make it very unclear.
Right? The whole relationship is so unclear. But at the same time, they're trying to tell us that this couple is going through some issues. And I'm like, well, I have no idea what their relationship was like previous to this. We hear one phone conversation between them, and I'm like, I don't even know if they were happy in the first place. And she's just kind of there. There's one montage that I keep thinking about that they kind of try to communicate that they're just on two separate playing fields. And then there's one scene, but there is one scene Felicity Jones has with James Franco, and that's like the only moment she really has in the movie, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. So I don't know. I think that whole relationship really kind of bothered me, the fact that I had no idea. Like at first, I didn't even know who she was. They don't really make it clear. You know, the way he's talking in the very beginning of the movie, it could have been his sister. I mean, who knows? I just did not. I mean, obviously I got that they were supposed to be together, but I just mean, looking at it, you're just like, come on, there's no development there. I have no idea how their relationship is. I don't know how they're going to interact. It's like the whole movie, they just barely interacted. She interacted more with Franco than she did with Jonah Hill. And I think that is supposed to be kind of the point, but I just had no idea what their relationship. I thought that was so poorly developed, and she was so underused.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think she's really, really poorly served by this movie, and you're right that I didn't care for The Theory of Everything, but I do think she's a good actress.
Yeah.
And this part is so insubstantial, and you're also right, that scene between her and Franco is completely unmotivated and unnecessary and makes no sense. And I think it goes part along with like these montages that you're talking about, and there's a lot of these kind of slow-mo moments of just like everyday things with these ominous this ominous score behind them, that, you know, it seems like the director is trying to imply that there's some physical danger here, that James Franco is going to break out of prison and kill these people or something, and that's never going to happen. I mean, again, it's a true story. Nothing like that even remotely happened, and it just felt like a very cheap way to approach the story. And putting the barely developed female character into potential danger is the cheapest way that you can kind of goose an audience. And yeah, I felt like that was very poorly handled in this film.
Yeah, and granted, even though, like, you know, what she was saying was pretty interesting, it was just like, wait, what? Like, where is this coming from? I don't know. And I don't know if that happened in real life. I mean, I looked up some things about the true case, but I don't think I know as many things as Josh ended up, because he said that the case is really interesting. So
yeah, I don't know if that confrontation specifically occurred.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything about that either way.
But yeah, so that was a major plot for me. And the more I thought about it, like, they try to make that a big part of the movie, and I didn't get it. I didn't buy it. I didn't like it. But like I said, I think the movie peaks really early. It kind of never really becomes what it wants to become. I think this is, you know, as Josh pointed out about Jonah Hill, is that it tried so hard to be some way. Like, I mean, I don't know if the movie really wanted to be this. And there was some really big confusing moments. Like, there are some moments where we're probably going to get into spoilers right now. So if you don't know what happened in the story, you don't want to know, I'd say fast forward a few minutes. But there's moments that happen and you're like, wait, I don't know about you, Josh, but this is how I took it. I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to take it one way or the other. For instance, like James Franco's, you know, on the stand, and then when he winks to Jonah Hill, like, I got what he was trying to say, but at the same time, I wasn't 100%. I was like, I get he's winking at him, but is he winking at him because he's like, hey, this is what you taught me. Hey, I got you. I've been fooling you. Ha, ha, ha. Like, to me, like, there were so many moments where I was just like, wait, what? Like, is that what he meant to say? Or it was just really kind of confusing and just not well communicated. Am I wrong? Do you agree with me on that? Or
no? I mean, I think that moment is maybe meant to be a little ambiguous. That you're maybe meant to feel like you're in Jonah Hill's shoes, where he is also thinking, wait, what is happening? And I mean, and if you read more about the case, you learn that in fact, and the movie kind of tells you this, although not quite as clearly as it really happened, that in fact he was completely lying on the stand, and he did do it all. He really did kill his family. He was stringing Michael Finkel along, and so I guess that's what that's meant to mean. And at that point, that Finkel realizes, oh, you know, I've essentially taught this guy a bunch of storytelling techniques that he's now used in order to make it seem like he didn't kill these people, which of course no one believes him anyway. So ultimately, I suppose it doesn't even matter.
Right.
But you know, those are all ideas I think that the movie could have played with better. You know, the idea of what is true and how do you tell the truth, and, you know, what does the truth matter, and all things like that are kind of thrown around here but never really followed up on in a meaningful way.
And I completely agree with you about having this whole the wife is in danger, and like at one point the movie kind of turns about being this true factual story you're following, where it kind of wants to become like Silence of the Lambs, or he's this, you know, this manipulating monster who is capable of pretty much anything. And you're like, granted, what the guy did was terrible, but I mean, he's in prison. It just felt like there's different ideas, different directions, and they all just kind of get jumbled up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think overall, I still came out of it saying it held my interest enough just because of the facts that I was, kind of glad that I saw it. But there could have been a much better treatment of this story.
And I'll agree. I think it is definitely worth watching. I would say, I mean, I don't think I was upset by watching it. I just don't. I think it's one of those situations where you're like, wow, I'm kind of disappointed because it could have been so much better than it was. But it wasn't. It wasn't awful either. It wasn't a movie that I would say, oh God, don't waste your time. There are some really great things to like about it. But it definitely gets kind of lost after, the first time, it comes a point where we're going in a direction. After the first conversation, the movie just kind of a little bit goes off the rails and never gets back on.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the opposite side of the theater, away from true story, is a very untrue story, but something that a lot of people are able to relate to, I'm sure, and that is the story of Unfriended. Now, Josh, I didn't know that was originally about MTV, originally by MTV, so I think that's pretty interesting because, I know MTV had produced or had been a major part of Project Almanac, and that felt like I was watching something on MTV, where this, I didn't get the same feeling. Before we get into it, Unfriended tells the story of a young girl, Blair, who is on her computer and Skyping all of her friends when all of a sudden they believe they're being hacked and start receiving threats from their dead friend's account on the anniversary of her death. Now, before we get into the review, I just want to kind of set the tone here or explain how this picture is, because even how I expected it wasn't really what it was like. The entire movie, 99.8% of the movie, is a computer screen. The whole screen is a giant Mac/Apple screen. We have the battery and the time up in the upper right-hand corner. We have all of her her applications on the left. She has Skype up. She has Facebook up. She has iMessages up. I don't think it's iTunes, but she has some sort of music application up. And we're pretty much watching her type and click on different things. We're pretty much watching a computer screen that someone else is operating. So keep that in mind, but I'll get into more about that in a minute. Josh, what were your thoughts about Unfriended? Because I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say about this movie.
Well, I mean, I think this actually kind of goes along with what we were talking about a little bit earlier about hoping that every movie will be good. And even though you see all these things beforehand, all this marketing and these trailers, and you think, oh, God, this is going to be terrible. But you walk into Paul Blart 2 and still think, well, I hope it works out. And this is one of those, and it almost never does. But this is one of those movies that I saw these trailers and I thought, oh God, this looks so stupid. It's just another one of these teen horror movies. And how many found footage movies have I seen? And they're all so lazy. You mentioned Project Almanac, which is a movie that barely can keep a cohesive idea about how its found footage concept works. And I went into this movie, and this was screened late in the week so that a lot of print publications can't review it, which is always a bad sign as well. And so I thought this is going to be a waste of time. And this movie is great. Like, seriously, this is one of the best movies of the year, I think. And I was just blown away. I mean, maybe I'm almost overreacting because I thought it was going to be such a waste of time, and it turned out to be such not a waste of time. But the first of all, the gimmick is incredibly effectively deployed. I mean, the director sticks to this rigidly, and just the way that small things happen in this film. For example, one of the things that struck me really strongly about this film is when the main character, you see her computer screen and she's typing messages, and you see her as she types something and then deletes it because she can't figure, and without any dialogue or seeing anyone's face, you really get a sense of her agonizing over how much information she should reveal to somebody or how she should say something that's sensitive. I mean, it's presented. It's a familiar idea that's presented in a really novel way, but at the same time in a way that's really relatable and real. I mean, everyone I think has done that same kind of thing, trying to type a message to someone and not
sent it.
Not sending it or not knowing how to phrase what you want to say. And just, I think everything about this movie is so effectively deployed. The Skype scenes, which were all apparently shot in a single long take of the entire film, each actor. like Locke, for example, that with the Tom Hardy film from last year where he's in the car, again, where they just shoot a whole take of the entire film and then shoot it again. And I was thinking about how difficult a challenge this must be for these actors, just staring into a Skype window for their entire performance, and just everything about this movie stylistically is so incredibly effective. The plot is pretty much your standard. It's basically I Know What You Did Last Summer. But for a plot that's very predictable and very familiar, it's deployed very effectively where it'll still get you wrapped up in something even though you can pretty much figure out every beat of the plot.
This is very true. So let me back up now here. We were watching this. I was with my girlfriend and my co-writer Louis Gorzolo, and for those of you who know, my girlfriend's not too crazy about most movies. She doesn't want to go with me because she knows most of them are going to be disappointing. And we were in the theater. I don't know what we were all watching, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to see this movie." Kind of jokingly, I was kind of just kind of making fun of, because as Josh said, we were like, "Oh God, this movie just looks like another teen horror movie that we've seen that is just thrown out there, and it's just not good and just repetitive." And then really early reviews started pouring in, and it was getting good reviews. I was like, oh wow, I'm kind of excited now. And the more and more it kind of stayed at a higher rating, I was like, I'm really getting stoked for this. And I have to agree with Josh. This movie was great. It was easily one of the best movies of the year. I mean, I think I've seen maybe a handful of movies that I've really kind of enjoyed this year, and this is easily at the top. One thing I loved about it, and I guess, to just, again, where Josh said, it just feels so relatable. I've been there. I have a Mac. I'm on iMessages. I'm on Skype right now doing this podcast. I relate to this. Granted, every other horror movie, there's the same kind of group of friends, but I've never ran someone over and hid the body and made a promise not to tell anyone. I've never had a psycho relationship with their best friend killing people off. I've never really had I've never had such a relatable experience as I did in this movie, where it's like, I do that all the time. Like, I could easily put myself in the shoes. And the movie it feels somewhat interactive at that point, where, you see her, iMessaging someone and having their side conversation, and we know that they're not communicating with the other people, and we're keeping things from each other. I enjoy the fact that there's literally a clock at the top right of the screen. You could actually watch the time pass by. Not that I was doing it, but that's just a really cool thing that I've never really kind of seen happen. This movie does a lot of cool things. Granted, like Josh said, it is kind of just like all right, but the movie, as far as story, all right, it's not the most creative plot, but at the same time, it never tries to be something that it's not. It never tries to, there's not some creepy voodoo lady next door who's able to explain the whole situation. They just go on websites and Google it. They do what I think most people do. They read in these forums about what happens, and there's no explanation. There's no real huge in-depth story about why it's we understand why it's happening, but as far as how it's able to happen, and that's cool. I appreciated that. I think we just went along for the ride, and it was really, really fun. I'm going to kind of get in a little bit of spoilers right now, so again, mind you, if you don't want to hear it, fast forward just a little bit. But another thing is that you kind of become you're in this Skype session you're with. It's like you are sitting with kind of people that you're getting to know, and you could quickly be like, oh, that reminds me of this person, my friends, and we're following Blair, who's essentially our main character. She's the person that we're kind of taking the perspective of, literally, on her computer. And the movie, she seems to be, as David Schmoll would say, the pure innocent virgin in most horror films. The
final girl.
Yeah. The final girl. She's the innocent one. She and the opening sequence, which is a bit raunchy, mind you, is them talking about having sex, and she's saying she wants to wait to prom. So that's it. That's her. She is the innocent, pure girl who doesn't do no wrong. She's the person that we're supposed to kind of take, accept that she's probably gonna be the one to live. And then in the middle of the movie, even though it's in the trailer, I guess I don't know. It's not very specific. She cheated on her boyfriend. So we're like, I felt betrayed. I was like, oh my God, I'm over here rooting for this girl, and she goes and hurts this poor guy. And I don't know why it was so effective, because in movies we see characters betray each other all the time, but this time it felt like our main character is betraying us. because we feel like we were part of the story. And maybe I'm looking into that too much deep. Maybe Josh didn't feel the same way, but I was like, whoa, that to me was a setback, because I was kind of like, well, I don't really, because then you're real iffy on the character, and you're kind of, everyone has their story. And I mean, some things are a little bit cheesy, sure, but there are things that you could look just beyond because of how much fun you're having. Josh, was I going a little bit crazy with that betrayal thing, or did you feel that too?
No, I mean, I think it was a clever inversion of the stereotype. The idea that you mentioned, that the main character who, the female main character in horror movies is oftentimes this pure virgin. And then as the movie goes on, we learn that no, she's not. She cheated on her boyfriend. She's not a virgin. And then if we want to get into real spoilers, that she is in fact the one responsible for what drove this other character to suicide and thus to haunt them. So, I mean, I thought that was kind of a clever way to approach the story. I wouldn't say that I felt so identified with her that I felt betrayed by it. Because I think one of the criticisms that I've seen about this movie, which I actually kind of liked about it, but one of the negative things that people seem to think is that these characters are all super unlikable. And I felt like that was just of a piece with all the rest of the characters. They're kind of petty. They're kind of superficial. They're kind of vapid. They kind of treat each other poorly because they're teenagers. Teenagers are terrible. And I thought this was a very realistic portrayal of teenagers.
It's true though, but I mean, like, I don't want to say identify with her, but that threw me aback. I was like, what? I was like, I can't trust you no more, man. And, and lo and behold, it's a good thing we don't, because we end up finding out she is responsible for it. And not saying that she's a horrible person, but like Josh said, they're teenagers. They do dumb things. They do sometimes really bad things. But, I mean, it was just, I felt that was really cool, because it did kind of bounce on that stereotype and throw it in our face a little bit. The movie does kind of, I don't want to say it's a movie about cyberbullying, even though it kind of is, but it's not this movie that's going to be like, this is anti-bullying, needs to stop. But it does kind of really capture a real horrific thing that happens on a daily basis. I mean, immediately there's a few times when things are posted and people are immediately just like, go kill yourself, you're a horrible person, you're a monster. And it's just like, that's pretty real. Like, that's might seem like an exaggeration of maybe the speed, but I mean, and maybe people on your friends list probably wouldn't say that, but honestly, that happens. Like, you go on YouTube, watch someone's video who has a lot of views, it happens. Like, people tell each other to go kill themselves all the time. There's some vicious things going on, and like I said, I don't think this movie's trying to make an incredible message about cyberbullying, but it's there, and I respect that as well.
Yeah, I think it handles that very well in the balance of it. This is not some sort of heavy-handed public service announcement, but it takes something that is in the news, that is in the zeitgeist or whatever, and twists it around to make it into a horror movie, which I think is a classic horror movie thing to do. For decades, horror movies have taken real life events or political things, whether it's the Vietnam War or the war on drugs or whatever, and use them as fodder for horror stories. So I think this is very much in the tradition of all sorts of horror movies, in the way that it does that.
Yeah, I mean, and me and Josh were talking after the screening. We were both just, I think, pleasantly surprised on how enjoyable this movie was. I honestly cannot boil it down more than just saying it was fun. I had a really great time. It's short too. I mean, it's only an hour and like 20 minutes, if that. And I had a great time the entire way. It was really cool. And there's also, as far as being a horror movie, it's not super scary. It's not a movie that'll haunt you. I don't know about Josh, but I get creeped out easily. If I see a horror movie, I sleep with the light on. But I mean, it really kind of puts us in situations where we are usually. Like, for instance, everyone's Skyped, everyone's FaceTimed, and the other person freezes, and we're kind of just sitting and waiting, like, hello, hello, hello. And then when that happens in the movie, when a character's connection drops, or, you find out why, but, they freeze and you're kind of waiting for something to happen. The image is frozen, but you hear things. That's just so identifiable. And it's a great opportunity to scare people too. And, with music coming on and not being able to turn it off, the volume button doesn't work. That happens sometimes. And it's just there's so many things where you're like, wow, that's happened to me before. But that moment when everyone's kind of frozen and then they'll hop back in and everything will be live and it'll start screaming. It's a good opportunity for scare, even though it's not a very scary movie. It was just very cool to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not traditionally scary in the same way. And I think that's to its credit, because a lot of the sort of cliched or traditional ways to scare an audience, like the sudden loud noises, or things in the background. I don't know. I think there's various ways, or even like with music or whatever, that are just not available to this movie because of the way it's presented, and because the filmmakers are so rigorous about keeping to that computer screen, they cut off for themselves a lot of ways that they could scare their audience, which I thought was admirable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not particularly gory, and there's certainly horrific moments. But yeah, I thought it was more of a thrill ride than it was scary. But yeah, you can see, I mean, I'm sitting here right now looking at the little default, blue Skype icon, which in the movie turns into this like sinister menace because that's the ghost.
Yeah.
And, it's a very real thing. It's you, it's you right now. You're the ghost from Unfriended on my computer screen.
It is. It's super relatable. And, it was just kind of really cool and great. But also another thing, not only do they limit who they're scaring, I do have to say, though, I think this movie does really have it cuts its demographic kind of in half, because a few of the older people that went and saw it did not enjoy the movie. And I feel like if someone is not on their computer and using it to their, has Skype before or used things, it is probably a lot more difficult to follow and a little bit probably of a headache, I have to say.
Yeah, that may be true. And I noticed at the screening that we were at that within the first maybe 10, 15 minutes, there were quite a few people who walked out.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's to this movie's credit, that it's, this is a dumb teen horror movie, or that's the way people are seeing or imagining it. And yet it has the sort of rigors of a serious art movie in a way, that it's not conceding to its audience. It's not showing you this Skype conversation and then, cutting away after a few minutes or whatever. So, I appreciate that it goes for it. It sticks to an idea and sees it all the way through. And it's okay if that alienates some potential viewers. I mean, I think good movies that have real artistic visions do that.
Yeah.
And, this is the last movie that you would imagine to describe that way, but I think it really is. And I think the fact that it captures exactly how people use that stuff at this moment. I mean, I think this is a movie that 2 years from now will probably look incredibly dated. And I think that's great in a way, because it captures exactly the way that people are interacting at this very moment. Just like you can watch an old movie and see people talking on party lines or something, like watch a Doris Day and Rock Hudson movie where the plot points are all hinged on the idea of party lines. And of course, that's incredibly dated. No one uses a party line anymore, but it captures the way that people were communicating at that time. And I think that's what this movie does for right now.
And you are absolutely right. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I would think the only thing that kind of bummed me out was the very last shot. I was like, damn, you almost had it. Like, I didn't need that. But I mean, I guess I kind of could see why they wanted to do it, because obviously we were basically Blair's perspective, but that was a little bit unnecessary. But
yeah, that was the last shot was a little cheesy, and I am a little concerned, as I was looking on Wikipedia when I mentioned the thing about MTV, to see if I could verify that. And actually it's not on there, so that may be entirely wrong. I forget where I read that. But what I did see on there was apparently the director has mentioned that he has multiple sequels planned, which I think is a terrible idea.
Terrible idea. Don't do it.
Yeah. So hopefully that won't happen. But I do think that kind of cheesy moment at the end is a bit of a okay, here's something we're setting up so that we can have a sequel. And I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And, we kind of now have to think is this going to be something that people are going to start doing now? Is it going to kind of start up a trend? Maybe not in the exact same way, but I'm sure it won't be long until we see something very kind of familiar. I mean, mind you, 1999 and probably even before that a little bit, we've seen found footage become just a staple, and it kind of loses the whole. It kind of, I would say, in the time period that it's been around, lost its real edge, kind of that it once had about being a found footage movie, because we've seen it so often. And most of the time, it's honestly done poorly, and it just kind of it's always, being off with the story and things like that. But I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, I think this movie is good. I think they should just let it rest. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I had a blast. Even the small issues we did have with it, I'm able to look over because it was so much fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there actually have been a couple movies that I haven't seen. There was a movie called Open Windows with Elijah Wood that came out a few months ago that from reading about it sounds similar, that it's set all on. I think it has more action because the whole plot of it is the idea that someone has a webcam like spying on somebody, and you can see things going on that you're not supposed to see and stuff like that. But I believe it does all, or at least almost all, take place on a computer screen. And there's another movie called The Den that I'm looking up right now that looks like it's the same thing, that's also from last year. So it's not a completely unheard of gimmick. But yeah, hopefully it won't become something where, like the Blair Witch Project, where we look back on that now and it doesn't seem so revolutionary anymore because so many people have copied it so poorly. Hopefully that won't happen to this movie as well.
Yeah. So all I could say is skip Paul Blart, maybe go see True Story down the line, but go see Unfriended. That's going to be the movie I'm going to highly recommend this week. I think Josh in agreement with it. We both obviously love this movie. Next week is CinemaCon. Me and Josh are going to be crazy busy, so we'll be updating you guys with movie stuff. I'm sure Josh will be writing a lot about a lot of it on the weekly. You can also read his reviews at LasVegasWeekly.com. Of course, always check out his personal blog, JoshBellHatesEverything.com, and follow him on Twitter where he tweets out all of his stuff at SignalBleed. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time out to being on the podcast. I know you are very busy, and I just appreciate that you take the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's always a good time.
All right, Josh. Well, we'll hope to have you on very soon. Maybe talk about CinemaCon and whatever other movie we see in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob Tirrano, and please continue chasing cinema.